Hey family, welcome back to K Job's Views. This review is special because it's following a book review, and I always love to do the book and show reviews. So this review is for Altered Carbon, which is at this point a 2-season show on Netflix based on a book by the same name. You can check out the book review. It's the prior video. But I want to get into the show review because we have a lot to get into. So let's get started. But as always, before we do get started, please like, comment, and subscribe to this page so that way you don't miss updates, new reviews, and new discussions going on. All right, so let's off the bat, I'm going to get into a bit of the review before I get into the synopsis. I encourage the show over the book in this case. I very rarely and probably may never even say this again, but if you watched my book review for this show, I didn't really care for the book as much as it was over sexual and kind of, I don't know, I didn't follow a lot of philosophical or spiritual arguments being put forward. The show does a good job at either avoiding those or kind of completing the thought in a way that's more enjoyable, or you know, even just packaging it in a way that's more enjoyable. As a warning, as an early trigger warning, there's a lot of nudity in the show. As in the book, the book does a lot of graphical sex descriptions. Thank God the show was not that graphic with sex, but you do see penises, you see boobies, you see booty, you see Twitter twatters. So that's your trigger warning. All right, so the synopsis. The synopsis is that we're in the future, centuries in the future, and we discovered, by we mean human beings, we discovered this science essentially available where we can create these stacks that you put in the back of your neck where your head and your spine meet. And these stacks basically store the whole human psyche. These stacks are implanted into the human child at the age of 1 year old. All your memories, experience, working out, every single thing that makes you up goes into this stack. The importance of this is that these stacks can be moved from body to body. So bodies are no longer called bodies, they're called sleeves, because you could put a stack in a new sleeve, like something you're wearing, and it literally is just something you're wearing. I could be in a white woman's named Karen's body, and it'll be K Job in her body. So that's the future, right? Also what's going on with this whole stack thing, it gives people the ability to essentially live forever, right? If you have enough money, you can have your stack placed into a new body, into a new body, into a new body. Also, with scientific advancement, hell, if we're going to have stacks, why not have clones? But of course, as always, everything goes to the richer of the rich. So while our technology has advanced, social disparities have remained the same, if not more of a gap between social and income disparities. So that's the new world setting, right? So our main character, Takeshi Kovacs, is this universal soldier, for lack of a better word. He's like, he fought in these things called the Envoys, which we later find out are essentially people who are against stack technology and believe that the human life has to end. In fact, there's a quote from the show where the protagonist's love interest, Quell, says death was the ultimate safeguard against our darkest angels. And that's true, because no matter what the rich and wealthy and all those in power do, all they can really do is try to pass on to their legacies to uphold that system, because eventually they die. And so the Envoys are basically fighting this whole stack thing or phenomenon. I can't even call it phenomenon because it's obviously been well established. I don't want to get into the confusion part, but anyway, so Takeshi Kovacs, our main protagonist, was a part of this group that did that, but he was also a part of the military that kind of fought this group. The Envoys, you can consider them rebels, right? And the Protectorate, consider that the government. So he used to work for the Protectorate. He also used to work for the Envoys. He's highly specialized, highly skilled soldier. None of that's relevant essentially because that's all in the past, sort of. It becomes important in the show. But his stack has been placed in the sleeve of this former Bay City police officer, Bay City like San Francisco Bay, Bay City police officer, and he's been hired by a rich man who's been alive for over 300 years to investigate his own murder. Now, if you recall what I just told you about the whole scenario in the world today, in that day, it's easy for a guy to ask for an investigation to his own murder, because Jesus Christ, it's so much. He downloaded his psyche into one of his clones, and he always downloads his psyche into one of his clones every 48 hours. But in between the last download and the murder, he allegedly killed himself. He doesn't believe he killed himself. He wants to find out what happened in those 2 days before he was murdered, or what the police say is a suicide. I can't get into this because it's like so much, but long story short, Tekashi unravels a huge ass conspiracy that actually involves his sister, who he thought to be dead, who saves his life, and she's involved in a conspiracy because as much as our technology has advanced and as much as our society has continued to stay the same in terms of disparities, we have also sunk deeper into the depths of depravity when it comes to sexual fetishes. And so, because you can kill a sleeve without killing the stack, if you follow, people, I guess, who are inclined or fetishize over S&M or abuse or that kind of torture thing, not my cup of tea. There's a market for that now, and you can torture people to death, essentially, because you're not killing their stack. But in this story, it turns out that the rich guy who hired Tekashi, he was drugged with something and tortured a couple women to death. And so his guilty conscience made him kill himself, right? So intertwined with this is this rule. I can't remember the rule number, but it's a law that's being put forward as a bill, right? And this was a lot clearer in the show than it was in the book, which is another reason why I appreciated the show over the book. This bill being put forward will allow people who are killed, their stacks to be brought back up for court purposes to accuse the person who killed them. Sounds actually like a really fucking good idea. Like, let's be honest, of all the things I said while talking, this actually is a selling point. Victims getting the chance to speak against their own killers. That's nice. But there's this religion coding thing, right? So that part from the book is still here. There are people who don't believe that the human soul can go into this machine, and to bring it back up is sacrilegious and you won't get into heaven, or it's not serving whatever God you serve. So there are people who get religious coding put on their stacks that, like, hey, you can't bring me back to life. Once I'm dead. That's it. That's done. But this bill will allow even those people to come back to testify against the people who killed them. So basically, what it turns out is Tak's sister is a bad person. She has, since Tak has been in ICE, after he was an envoy, he was in ICE, so to speak, for 250 years, which means that his stack was just sitting somewhere in a center, essentially. And meanwhile, his sister was running about collecting power, collecting money, amassing wealth, amassing infamy. So it turns out she was actually involved in this rich guy being killed. She wanted him to vote no on the bill that would allow people to come back and accuse their killers, because she ran a sex ring where people were being real death all the time. It's called real death when you kill not just the sleeve, but the stack. She would have these rich guys come and they torture people to death, or in other ways kill someone. And sometimes she would go ahead and have someone who wasn't basically hookers who thought they were not going to be real death would be real death. And she didn't need this coming back up to bite her in the ass, so she needed the rich guy to vote no on the bill, which he did after she blackmailed him by having him drugged to kill two hookers, real death, two hookers. He did vote no on the bill, but then he also killed himself, and that's how Takashi came about. Takashi is her brother. She wanted her brother to kind of work the case because it saves her ass, and it gets her brother back, who she's been missing for 250 years. Now, let's get into some of this review, right? So part of my kind of hesitation with a show like this is it really, one, I don't like seeing a lot of nudity. I feel like that's what porn is for, and I know like that's so weird. Like, it's nudity. It's the human body. You got a dick, they got a dick. She got a vagina, they got a vagina. We all got it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm just always unnerved, especially. I'm double standard. I'm gonna say it, dicks. It just unnerves me when a dick just pops up on the screen, and I'm just kind of like, should I close the windows? Are people going to think I'm looking at porn? Like, what? Anyways, so that kind of, but at least it was less sex than the book. Again, I think the show does a very good job with the storyline that the book had and changing it. It does completely change it. You're not getting barely at all the same plot. You're getting a lot of the same people and some of the same plot, but very much a different plot. The plot that the show uses, I think, is a better plot. I think is well suited. What does make me uncomfortable with the show's plot is Raylene, who is Takashi's sister, who ends up being the big bad guy. There's this, maybe it's because I just have a brother and not a sister. I am so uncomfortable when siblings almost seem incestual. Like, why do you need Takashi in your life so bad to the exclusion of everyone else? Like, that's really, it's uncomfortable. Like she's obsessed. So that part is, to me, uncomfortable, but other people may like that. It did help move the plot away from what it was in the book and make it still make sense. I didn't immediately like the black guy, Elliot. His last name's Elliot. In the book, he's in the first couple chapters and then pops up again at the end. You don't see him at all. In the show, he's all up in the show. He's a part of every episode. He's basically the unwitting sidekick. At first, I really didn't like it, but because it helped wrap up things and it helped make his daughter, who was very weak and broken in the show and in the book, but she was that way throughout in the book, and in the show she becomes this badass. His part, I guess, was essential to her becoming a badass, so I do get that now. But in the first part, I really didn't get that. It really makes you, I like shows that do make us kind of think about the societal and class differences. I do think at this point they're so apparent in our society that we don't need shows to highlight them, but there are people who still walk around thinking that things are equal and fair, so maybe we do continue to need shows like this. The ending of it, I didn't much care. I'm sorry, I'm talking about only season 1. I haven't watched season 2. That's probably going to be very much backlogged. The ending of it, of the first season, I didn't love it. Again, the sister already, that relationship already was weird to me, or the way she was impressing upon it was weird to me. But for her to then, basically to slightly backtrack, the protagonist, when he was working with the envoys, the leader of the envoys was this woman named Kel, who becomes his love interest, who is played by my girl from Hamilton, Goldsberry. I forget her first name, and she's great. I love her. But that's his love interest, and his sister basically kills her at the end of the envoys flashback, right? But apparently she kept the stack, which she downloaded before, which, I mean, honestly, that's a big plot hole. There was no way. You guys showed the whole fight scene, and there was no time that would have, I don't know. I didn't, I don't care for plot holes. And I understand that they're going to happen because sometimes when editing's happening, things get left on the floor. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of like, really? So, okay. But that it is what it is. So either way, I very much enjoyed the show more so than the book. I would encourage you to just watch the show and not bother reading the book. But if you want more details on it, then, watch my book review. Again, the book is just very science fiction heavy and very sexual. But the show is very sexual as well, just not as much as the book. So that is your review of Altered Carbon. I think that's about all I have to say about it. Anthony Mackie's in season 2. The first season is not Anthony Mackie. But the first season's great, Check it out and continue to check out these reviews. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for tuning in. I will see you guys on the next flick.